After talking with Drew and Machine Drum, I chatted with Thorne, one of the producers who jumped on the Hit 'Em craze and submitted a track which was selected for the compilation. I asked him about some of his production processes and decisions he had to make to bring what he had in mind to life. So, when it came to working with such restrictions for a track, did it spark creativity you wouldn't otherwise have had in a normal production?
Yeah, it's funny. I think for everything that I make, I always try and work. I always try and work within a certain parameter of limitations. I think that in general breeds creativity, right? And so this song kind of came together in a weird way. It started as a drum and bass demo from earlier in the year. I knew I wasn't going to end up doing anything with. So it was an opportunity for me to go in and actually see if I could make something out of it, which was cool. For me, it's like the limitations of the genre that, as they've been written, it was like a lucky happenstance that I kind of had something that fit that anyway. But in general, I absolutely think limitations breed creativity. And for me, this one was really about finding a good almond break chop that sounded like it flowed naturally in 5/4 and at 212 BPM.
Yeah.
And if I could figure that out, the rest of the song would kind of come naturally. So I did that kind of triplet repeating thing, and I figured I can extend that out for an extra beat every measure. And that then kind of flows back into the one on the next one. And once I had that landed, I was then really able to kind of readopt that melody I'd written for that previous drum and bass tune to fit over it by splitting it in two. And then everything just kind of came together naturally. But I really wanted to focus on finding a Hit 'Em track that had a natural drum groove to it, if that made any sense. Because I think it's really easy to just be staccato nonsense everywhere. But if I could find a way that flowed, then maybe something could come out of it. And that was the limitation I gave myself. If you're only ever producing in 4/4, it's way easy to go, well, this is going to sound weird. So we might as well lean into the weird and make it very 5/4 and make it very IDM-y. Let's put that blanket on it. But I don't know. I think my intention was how normal can I get this to sound?
How normal can you get
in terms of how bro-steppy American nonsense can I get this to sound to where maybe I would put it in a set and people might not know it's 5/4 right off the rip. I think EPROM did a really good job at that as well. On his tune. Just that riff feels really natural. And that was kind of what I was going after as well. I wanted it to feel we're not stutter stepping into the next thing.
Yes.
It is completed and it makes sense to go on to the next part of it.
And that's what it felt like to me when I first listened to it. When I first heard your tweet and you sent it to me, and I thought this actually doesn't feel too off. It doesn't make my brain go, oh, that was a bit janky there, or that felt weirdly stuttery. Yeah. It had that kind of progression that you would expect from some kind of tune that was like this. Especially with that Skrillex style,
very
in the drop and
Skrillex-y, lasery.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I wanted a bro steppy kind of. And it's funny because it doesn't necessarily align to what I'm doing with the rest of the project right now. But weirdly enough, doing James Dean, I was like, oh, I could do this. Like, yeah, sure. This could be part of Thorne as well, because that's like a jungle tune out of nowhere. So it makes me want to do more of that kind of stuff.
Was it difficult for you working with such a fast tempo and the odd time signature?
It's funny. I was listening to the compilation again this morning. I was going on a walk and just listening to it, and I was like, damn, my song is so short, but it feels like a lot happens because it's at 212 BPM.
Yes,
you know, I don't know if it was necessarily super difficult, because in my spare time, like, sometimes I gravitate towards making drum and bass or jungle, and that's, 3/4 as fast. I do think over 200 BPM, you get into like blurry territory where like things start to kind of mush together because it's so fast. So
unless you're Little Texas.
Unless you're Little Texas, and then that's a feature, not a bug.
Yes,
you can kick drums so fast that it just sounds like one tone. But one thing I tried to do on purpose in the tune was, because there's that affinity for everything to kind of blur together, is like, all the drum hits are the most staccato drum hits I think I've ever put in a song, because I wanted to leave that space in between, or else it was just going to sound like a flurry of, percussion and snares the entire time. So the kick drum is like this big, and the time, like, there's nothing to it. It's just transient. And that was like a purposeful choice I made to accommodate for the tempo. But outside of that, like, it didn't feel really any different than trying to come up with a catchy riff for a drum and bass song. It's just slightly faster.
Thorne had a previous project called Magna, who I may make a video on at some point, and over 10 years ago he was contacted by the devs for Hotline Miami to make a new version of one of his songs for the game, which Thorne compares the experience of submitting a song for the Hit 'Em compilation to that experience. He also gives some closing thoughts on the electronic music scene back then, and how this felt like a small resurgence of that time.
A lot of people that have gotten into dance music more recently, I don't think they realize how much of the Wild West it was up until like 2017. Like, it was, stuff could just go away. Like, everything was an ID or a bootleg, and stuff could just go away overnight. And I think, to like bring it back to the Hit 'Em thing, like, new genres could pop up every second. Like, I remember like when Moombahton happened, and and then all of a sudden everybody had a Moombahton song. Like, even Porter had 100% in the bitch all of a sudden. And like, everybody had some cool new take on this genre. And Hit 'Em was really like the first thing that I saw online post those Wild West days that really reminded me of that. And I think that's really cool, that can still happen, even with these kind of new updated ways that we all kind of communicate and the way the scene looks on social media. It was cool to see something very organic rise out of nothing, which is essentially why I really wanted to be part of it. It's like, finally, something that I'm ready to contribute to, because I feel confident enough in my abilities to do so. And it was, it's still such an honor to be like on the actual compilation. I never thought that was going to happen. It was, to me, relatively opaque what the selection process is, and that's probably a good thing, right? Like, I don't want to be super involved if I'm in the running. And like, it was crazy to see that I had been selected, and then learning what the pool of super talented artists and songs that were in there. I still haven't, I really haven't thought about that deeply yet, just because I'm like, oh wow, how lucky. It feels a lot like getting a song on the Hotline Miami soundtrack, because I'm sure, and that process was relatively opaque to me too when it happened. I think that's one of the reasons I was really bullish on doing the Hit 'Em thing as well, because I know all too well, like, if you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to get a yes, and like, I had something that I thought could be a cool Hit 'Em tune, and wanted to work within those limitations, and I wanted to do it kind of quickly and cobble it together from disparate sources, and based off of stuff that wasn't going to go anywhere anyway, much like that the Magnitude, and then submit it and see what happened, and it got picked again, much like Divide got picked to be in that soundtrack. I'm trying to get better over time of like learning lessons from older opportunities and saying yes to more things because of stuff like that.